Hello, guys. I wanted to talk to you tonight about this this old infographic called "The Illusion of Choice." Now, this was created back, I think, maybe 10 years ago, and I first saw it maybe 2 years after that. I think I first saw it in maybe like 2012. But it was "The Illusion of Choice." These 6 companies control 90% of the media, and those 6 companies, for a recap, back in the early 2000s, or well, not the early 2000s, but about 10 years ago, this was General Electric, Time Warner, News Corp, CBS, Viacom, and Disney. Now, if we go strictly by the old model of what these six companies, well, for one thing, General Electric sold General Electric, who owned Comcast and Universal and DreamWorks. They sold it to one of their subsidiaries, Comcast. Ended up buying Universal and DreamWorks. And then, so GE's out of there, and then Time Warner sold to AT&T. So GE gets replaced by Comcast, and Time Warner gets replaced by AT&T. And then Viacom and CBS end up merging, and then, so what is the original 6 becomes 5, but but nowadays it's more complicated, because I feel that when you're talking about media, what is media now isn't quite what it used to be. Now it's more, it's not a one-way street of or a one-way pipeline of information. Just TV shows and TV shows and movies and news and radio just being dumped out to us. Now it's a two-way street where people comment and people share and like and make friends and profiles and edit and add and upload and download content. I mean, the whole thing's been flipped on its head, and any company who doesn't, it's just changed so much. I mean, the only company who did it a little differently was Netflix. They were just ahead of the curve, really, and that's why what we've seen over the years has been decline. Netflix is, like, even 5 years ago, Netflix was still pretty much the only horse in the race when it came to streaming content. But these days, Netflix has lost so much ground to companies to Amazon Prime and Hulu, and now even Disney Plus has taken a huge jump. And Netflix's numbers have been growing during this coronavirus pandemic too. But at some point, people are gonna. Well, who knows? Netflix has been growing a lot internationally, but as far as the biggest players, I don't know if Netflix. I mean, they're obviously the biggest in streaming, but when it comes to full engagement with their viewers, I don't know if Netflix is quite what. I don't know. I mean, they're obviously huge. I mean, they're the biggest in video streaming, but it's still modeled off an old system, and they don't own any of the infrastructure. I mean, they've got a great variety of content, but they don't own the infrastructure. AT&T, Comcast, those are the guys who run the pipelines. They're just now trying to get into the business of content. AT&T and Comcast, they're not content creators, and it's pretty obvious because they've been trying to strike it. They've been trying to dip their toes into content, and it hasn't gone great. Now they've got plenty of resources, and again, they own the pipeline, they own the roads. Netflix and Disney are just cruising along in their cars. If a car doesn't have a road, then what use is the car? If there's no road, what use is it to have a car? If we're talking about Netflix being the car, and or Amazon Prime or Disney for that matter. What's the point of having a car if you don't have a road to get you where you need to go? And that's where we are today, and that's why AT&T and Comcast have this. They have that triple service model where you've got the internet, you got TV, internet, and phone service all combined as a package deal, and that's why they're obviously in this. Then you've got a company like Google, which is they're the big innovators, and YouTube and like, to not count YouTube and Gmail, and even like what Google is doing with if you type in you can pick any business, type in a business, and if they are open during, and Google will tell you their business hours. They'll tell you if they're busy right then and there. They have people are, like, you go to a restaurant and they'll ask you what the service was like, and they'll ask you if it was busy at the time you were there. Google has infiltrated so many ways of communicating that didn't exist 10 years ago. Even when Google was already big, they weren't Google Maps big, they weren't Gmail big, they didn't take the whole restaurant review idea. They didn't have all that. They weren't like they had owned YouTube 10 years ago, but YouTube wasn't what it is today. YouTube was a more free place where videos, the most popular videos were videos of parents and their kids, or parents with their, or people videotaping their cats. That was YouTube 10 years ago. YouTube today is completely different. And so so what I would say today to wrap this up, you've got Google and Disney, and Google, Disney, and Facebook, I would say, are new in the top 5, and then you have AT&T and Comcast. So to recap, AT&T, Comcast, Disney, News Corp, and Viacom CBS. Those 5 would be what you'd call the traditional 5, the big 5 media of 10 years ago. But today, I would say that it's AT&T, Comcast, Disney, and then you would add like Google and Facebook. Like, I don't think that you can have a modern media landscape and talk about it openly without adding Google and Facebook into that, and to lump Google and Facebook in with companies like Disney, Comcast, and AT&T when they're such different companies is difficult. But at the end of the day, we're all just talking about. These are all ways of trying to, like, you're trying to get a product in there for people to see. What do all these companies have in common? They all live and die by advertising, and Disney doesn't necessarily live and die by advertising, but the other 4. Okay, scratch the advertising thing. Advertising alone is a whole complicated thing, but I would say that those are the big 5, and I wanted to just express that. So the whole media landscape has just, as everybody pretty much knows at this point, the whole media landscape is turned on its head. And to just make one video about this is not going to be enough. So there'll be more. So buckle up.